I guess I'll start. Hi, I am Professor Paul Edwards. I am assistant faculty in the Department of English at NYU, also a member of the Dramatic Literature faculty here.
And hello, my name is Mfon Akpan. I am the artistic director for STEP Africa.
So I guess, Mfon, other than saying hi and welcome to NYU, I guess I would love to sort of hear. I guess there's sort of two or three threads we could sort of talk about. One is about STEP Africa as a wonderful institution. I think another part is just talking about your own relationship to STEP, where STEP has, where STEP starts for you and how it's brought you here. And I guess also just thinking about what does it mean for STEP to be performed in front of an audience. I'm used to thinking of STEP as being part of Black fraternities, Black sororities, sometimes separately an intramural activity that is somewhat more community-based instead of like on the stage in a venue. But I think those are sort of the three things I would love to see where we get to with those categories. But I guess we could just start with you. Can you tell us about yourself and how you got started in STEP or any other?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm originally from Queens, New York. So shout out to New York. I'm really excited to be performing at NYU. My background is I grew up dancing, started dancing when I was 3. I attended the Bernice Johnson Cultural Arts Center in Jamaica, Queens. Subsequently, when I went to high school, I was a cheerleader. I went to the Bronx High School of Science, and as a cheerleader there, we actually stepped. So I got a great foundation there, and then I went to Stony Brook University, where my major was biochemistry and molecular genetics with a minor in dance. And as I was there, I joined my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and continued stepping with my sorority as well as on campus for quite a few years, and loved the experience. And so one day, one of my sorority sisters just approached me and said, "Hey, there's this dance company. I think you'd really enjoy the opportunity." And I went out and I auditioned for STEP Africa. And I started with the company in 2005 as a dancer. So I was a performer for many years, became the assistant artistic director and subsequently the artistic director. So now I am off the stage, but I am still working with the company in many ways, and I love my experience here.
That's such a fascinating journey, and I'm wondering, what was it like to go from I imagine the auditioning practice, the auditioning world of Bronx Science to the auditioning world of Stony Brook to then like an actual company. I mean, I imagine in some respects it just got more competitive. Like, what was that environment like moving from each one of these steps?
Well, I will say my foundation at Bernice Johnson really cultivated my confidence and also my expertise in auditioning, in the auditioning process. That dance studio really brought out a lot of greats back in the day, and the legacy still continues. But it was something that prepared me well for what was going to happen later on in life. So I just took those skills and applied it to these different entities, and I was able to make each team that I auditioned for. Yeah.
When you narrate your own journey, and I think, being someone who is majoring in the sciences, who's holding on to dance as sort of this, other thing that you do, right? Like, I think of my time being an undergraduate, sort of like you pick your major, that's your life. And you have these things that sort of remain, but you sort of like put them to the side. I mean, when you think about like, oh, you were able to sort of pull off holding on to the creative side, being able to sort of keep going in terms of dance, I mean, like, do you find yourself sort of surprised you were able to sort of keep it going for so long? I mean, there's so many creative people who wonder how they're going to hold on to that creative side throughout their life.
Absolutely. So I like to say there's a science to art and art to science.
Hmm.
And I've always embraced both sides of that when it comes to myself. And I think STEP Africa just being in existence. So we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. And the fact that the company has been able to provide a platform and an opportunity for people such as myself and others who really carry the love of stepping and performing arts, I think that has really propelled the art form forward. That has really provided an opportunity for people to travel the world and share this art form, preserve this art form, innovate the art form, so that stepping is not just something that you'll find in the collegiate market, but it's also something that you can find on world stages and theaters and, you know, just across the country and across the globe. So
Yeah.
I think the existence of Step Africa has really fueled that in that respect, to that nature.
Mhm. So I'll admit we sort of jumped right, jumped right in and sort of talk about your own journey, but I realized you sort of maybe step back and actually talk about what STEP is. I think when people think of STEP, especially in my own world, when I talk about STEP, people think I'm talking about tap dancing. And I think there's a similar journey between these Black movement forms, but they also like have very distinct origins and a very distinct coming into being. And I'm curious if you could tell us more about the origins of STEP and what STEP is for those
Absolutely.
who haven't been initiated.
So Step Africa defines stepping as a highly energetic, polyrhythmic, percussive dance form created by African American college students. So what Step Africa has done is really investigated where stepping came from. So a lot of people, you know, will say, hey, stepping comes from Africa, but our research actually shows that stepping started in the United States. And we really like to pinpoint a part of history around 1739, 1740. It started with the Stono Rebellion. And that happened in South Carolina, where enslaved Africans decided that they were going to fight for their freedom. Subsequently, in 1740, the Negro Act was put into place, and that really restricted and banned the use of the drum, which was instrumental to the rebellion. And once that was restricted, once that was taken away from the Africans, the enslaved Africans, we like to say that was kind of the birthplace of African American culture. Now, what happened was they started to put the rhythms in their bodies instead. So the drum was outlawed. We're going to turn our bodies into a drum, into that musical instrument. And then you start to see a long progression of African American percussive art forms. So you have the ring shout, you have pat and juba, you have tap, you have stepping, you have this evolution of movement and dance and song throughout the culture. So that's really how we identify stepping in Step Africa.
And it's such a I've seen Step Africa, I think, 3 times now. And one of the most amazing moments in your productions, and I think this was back when you were running the migration series, and you have this moment,
which is coming back.
which is coming. I'm really excited. It's one of my favorite shows you all put together, and we can talk about that as well. But you know, the moment on stage where you actually embody the Stoner Rebellion, and you have that moment of, you know, they took the drums away, is so powerful. And I think there's a way in which, for those who are uninitiated, that moment is visceral and so felt in what is done on stage. And I think, you know, one of the things I love about Step Africa is that it's not just, you know, not just this amazing performance, but also it's history in the body. And I feel like it's so well done in your shows. And you know, just shout out to that amazing work you do to make that really felt.
Thank you. Well, and it's quite interesting. So the migration, that was a great piece of work that we toured for a while, and that was directed by Jakari Sherman, who also directed a work that we're currently touring, which is called Drum Folk. And Drum Folk really goes into the expansive history of the Stoner Rebellion and subsequently what happened. So, you know, the ring shout, we look at vocal percussion, we look at the resistance and the resilience of the people and what happened because of that event. When it comes to the migration, you know, that is something that I'm glad that you said that phrase, because that is something that audiences really respond to. You know, they took the drums away, but they could not stop the beat. We keep going. We are resilient, innovative people. And another thing that you said that I find really interesting is the history of the body. That is the history of our movement. That's in our DNA. It's in our blood. Rhythm is universal. Dance is universal. History, clothing, food, all of these things are what bring people in different cultures together. And we just want to tell that story. And I think Step Africa provides that perfect platform in order to do that.
Yeah. And I think so much of Black culture, I think, across the African diaspora is built out of forms of resistance. And I think the fact that we have this embodied performance, which is at once a mode of making up for a loss, that there are no drums, that there's that, the breaking of community through the Atlantic slave trade, but there's that survival, and there's that innovation, and then there's that improvisation of like, how can the body make up for that loss? And it's always a stunning thing to sort of see across the African diaspora. If it's stepping, ring shout, if it's capoeira in Brazil, there are just ways in which the body can continue to resist. And it's amazing to see that transformation from the 1700s to now, and see the ways in which it's become our culture. It's become visible in so many ways.
Absolutely. And it's something that's it's a history, and it's muscle memory, but not only muscle memory, it's memory of your DNA. These different art forms and practices. It's how do you know these things? You just know, you instinctively know. And to be able to express that is also a beautiful thing, because it's a legacy that keeps going.
Yeah. This feels so important to me, because I was meeting with faculty the other day, and we were talking about dance, and how do we talk about dance history without film, without YouTube, without sort of the showing a student dance and showing what it used to be and what it is now. Like, how do we show that change over time? Because dance is temporal, it can be ephemeral. It happens for 5 minutes, it happens for an hour, it happens for 2 hours, and you're done, you're sweated, you're tired, and you wait till the next time until you can dance. And I think one of the things that Step does so well is, it does that history. It doesn't let it be ephemeral. It lets it sort of persist and exist for over 2 centuries now. And I think people will be really excited to see Step Africa NYU this upcoming next weekend, not this weekend. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're really excited to be back in New York and at Skirball. And the thing about our shows is that you really need to be there to get that feeling, to feel it. It's not just us on stage, but you are a part of the experience. It's an energy that transcends the entire space. We take that stage and turn it into a drum.
Yeah.
So it's something that you're going to feel throughout your whole body.
Yeah, so maybe we can talk a little bit more about sort of Step Africa and its own journey and your place in it, and talk more about the migration and about drum folk. Can you tell us a bit about what brought Step Africa into existence?
Well, Step Africa was started in 1994 by C. Brian Williams. He's a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and also a graduate of Howard University. And he went over to South Africa to work and live for a little bit. And when he was there, he was introduced to the South African gumboot dance. And as he saw this particular dance, he was curious about it, and he saw that it really was similar to stepping in terms of the percussive nature. He inquired about the dance, met some people from the Soweto Dance Theater, and a festival was started where Americans would share our culture, which is, stepping, some hip hop dance classes, that kind of thing. And the South Africans would share their culture, mainly Inglamu, which is the Zulu dance, and also gumboot. And so it was a festival that happened year after year. And after a while, there was a need for us to actually show this stuff to the public, on stage. And so Step Africa then gradually became a dance company. So first started out as a cultural exchange, but then became a touring dance company, I would say, in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
So, and we're still going. We're still doing
Yeah.
workshops. We're still exchanging. We're still sharing. And whenever we go overseas, we want to, get up with the locals and, you know, learn their dances. And we teach stepping. It's really been a great and amazing experience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the migration because I'm a scholar of the Harlem Renaissance. A lot of my work is on the transmission of tap dance from America to Europe and what Europeans thought about tap. And one of the things that is really awesome about Step Africa is, I guess I'll say a little bit and you can sort of expand it and say all the things that I don't know, but the migration is based off of the migration series of paintings by Jacob Lawrence, which I believe they're split. Half the paintings are held in Philly and the other half are down in DC. Is that
The
right?
Phillips collection has half of the series, and MoMA actually has the
MoMA.
other half
Okay. All right.
in New York. Yeah,
Already have it half wrong, but it's separated between the odd numbers and the even numbers, I think.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the series tells through amazing Jacob Lawrence's style, bold colors, geometric shapes of people and
Yes.
movement. Just a movement of the migration of Southern Blacks moving to hopeful prosperity in the North. And, we can talk about the hopes, dreams, successes, and failures of that. And just Jacob Lawrence just brings that out in these vivid images of families and also the tragedies. I mean, there are images of a lynching tree and the real desperation and need
And
of
the riots.
and the
Hmm.
riots. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yes.
I would love to sort of hear, your side of sort of interacting with this material and creating migration.
Absolutely. So when the migration was first brought to the company, when we first performed it, I actually was a dancer in the first time we did it, and then the second time we brought it back around. So I really got to learn a lot about the history of that period of time. We really researched and shared the research amongst the dancers about what was going on, how you may have felt as someone who was in an oppressive South with all of these different kind of laws, and what the hope was to move up north or out west. um, the work that Step Africa had been doing up until then helped to support some of these themes. And so when you look at Jacob Lawrence's work, you really get inspired by, like you said, the colors and the shapes and the actual energy that you feel coming out of this work. And Jakari Sherman, the director of the work, he really took time and looked at the panels and figured out, like, okay, what pieces could help bring this story to life? What pieces of work, what pieces of art um, would pair with the dances that we were doing, the movement that we were doing.
Mhm.
And so when you look at the actual length of work, we start on the shores of Africa, where, we know that people were taken and enslaved into America. And then we take this journey through the South, through the first act of the work. And then by the second act of the work, we're headed up north. And you see this progression and you feel this movement of what it may have been like around that time. And we end on a jubilant note. We end up in, let's say, Chicago,
Mhm.
where there's new hope and new possibilities and opportunities for employment, opportunities to bring your family up. We look at, the man's role in the family. We look at the women and what they were charged with. And, it's just, it's interesting to know that these are the stories of our ancestors that were
Mhm.
right here. And when you look at America today, I mean, you see a little bit of a reverse migration where
Mhm.
people
Yeah.
up north are actually returning to their homes down south or returning to the south, again, for looking for better opportunities. So it's actually interesting because it's like full circle moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's thinking about that migration. It's actually even like hard to sort of like telling someone now, like people didn't talk about Atlanta the way we talk about Atlanta over the last 10, 15 years. Like the idea that, there's a show called Atlanta. This
Yes,
whole thing, because it used to be Brooklyn, used to be the Bronx, it used to be LA, and thinking about sort of like South Central and Compton as sort of places of Black existence. And ironically, we're coming back to Atlanta, we're coming back to the Carolinas.
yeah,
And I had a student, it's been a few years now, but like writing about the Carolina coast and the Black communities there and the food traditions
the
that come
Gullah
out of
Geechee.
there.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
talking about the poetry and the works that come out of there. And it seemed not too long ago we wouldn't talk about that. And it
Hmm.
feels like it's becoming global, that sort of recognition of sort of the Black South and the desire to actually reclaim that after, late 19th century through, the 1970s, 1980s as a place that seemed, too racist to tolerate. And now it feels like it's something we can, take back and talk about.
I really think, I really not even think, I really feel like this work is so important because it's a story to be told. It's our story to be told. And if we don't tell it, then who's going to tell it?
Mhm.
So the fact that these conversations are ongoing and happening is something that's great because the documentation is there. And, we just, you need to be able to tell these stories because some of these things, you know, can repeat themselves in
Mhm.
other ways. But if you understand what the story is, and then you can decide to do something a little bit different,
Yeah.
you know?
Um, I wonder if you could tell us about the show people are going to see this weekend, which is it Drum Folk this weekend?
No, so this
Okay.
is our standard touring show that we
Uh-huh.
take across, we last season we did a 70 city tour, I believe,
Wow.
of this. So it's a high energy 90-minute experience, no intermission. We hit you hard from the beginning and we don't let up until the end.
Nice.
You'll get a little bit of stepping, you'll get a little bit of the South African gumboot dance and also the traditional Zulu dance.
Mm.
It's great for families of all, ages, all races, everyone should come and
Everyone.
see this
Yeah.
show.
Mhm.
You will definitely have something to talk about. You will leave feeling uplifted and energized.
Mm.
And we have great, beautiful dancers, intelligent dancers. They
Mm.
move beautifully across the stage,
Mm.
and they really enjoy the work, and that's visible with how they perform on the stage.
Wonderful. And actually, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the dancers. I mean, everyone comes from their different backgrounds. So I'll admit, I've interviewed Jakari a few years ago,
Okay,
and
yeah,
he's actually coming to speak at NYU before you all perform.
yes.
So which I will also be part of. And I know, for example, his background being from
Hmm.
Houston, similarly performed in college, but also was responsible for like, the first step team to be attached to a NBA team.
Yes.
Um, but
That
I
is
would,
his background. Yep.
yeah. And
Houston, Texas, all of that
yeah,
great stuff. Yeah.
he's a very proud Houstonite, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us a little bit more about members of the company. Where are they coming from? Is it sort of a similar um, love of dance? Did some step in college? Are there other pathways people have come to Step
Oh
Africa?
yeah. So the company members are very diverse and we see the diversity over the years. So some people are more traditional in terms of I stepped with my fraternity in college, I stepped with my sorority in college. Some are musical theater majors, so that was their main focus, and they somehow found their way to audition to Step Africa. Quite a few have been to our shows, like we tour the college show, colleges and universities across the U.S. And they've come to a show and been so inspired
Hmm.
that they would come to an audition, and it's like now they're here.
Yeah.
We have some musicians, and then there is the background of people are computer science majors or meteorology or mass communication.
Yeah.
So it's very diverse, but the commonality is we love to step, we love to perform, and this is
Hmm.
what we want to do with our lives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
maybe one of the last questions I can sort of ask, I think especially thinking about you all being on tour and doing these sort of world tours. I mean, what type of I guess I'm sort of curious, like what type of questions do people have from, I guess, outside the United States when they first like see you? Or I imagine they're amazed, but I imagine they sort of come with a lot of questions that sort of show the difference being from another country or another culture. Yeah, what is it like to sort of explain step sort of out there in the world?
Um, what's interesting is one of the first questions we get, and this is from, yeah, I mean, from kids, from people everywhere, is, do your hands hurt? Um, so then we go into explaining how this is actually our full-time job. This is our full-time career. How we are, when we're not on the road, we are in studio training Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. till about 5 p.m. We really take our conditioning and our body care very seriously. Because we want to be able to deliver these performances to communities, everywhere.
Mhm.
So that's one question that is a universal question. Other than that, just explaining what it is that we do. So, whenever you travel, sometimes there's a language barrier.
Mm.
But when it comes to the arts, when it comes to movement, that's universal. So
Yeah.
once we hit the stage, or once they see what it is that we do, or once they experience through
Mm.
workshops and master classes what it is that we do, there's a lot of explaining doesn't need to happen after that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so um, it's a rewarding experience, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And maybe the last thing we can sort of chat about, maybe the sort of last question is I'll sort of set it up a little bit, which is that, during COVID, the NYU STEP team couldn't really perform, didn't have an audience. People graduated and, they are in the midst of restarting. And I guess,
Yeah.
what would your advice be to young steppers in college trying to, uh, build on this long legacy, get things going, meet new people, and create a college company, a college crew? What advice would you give?
Don't stop. Persistence is key. So whether you have one person or two people or 10 or 20,
Mhm.
if someone can step and hold down a beat, I mean, if you come to our show, you'll see we'll have one stepper holding down the stage for, a good chunk of time. Um, you don't ever stop. You
Mm,
cannot stop the beat. The beat never stops.
that's
So
right.
persistence is key. If you have a love and a passion for something,
Mhm.
that brings you joy into your life, and that is something that you should always, in my opinion, work to strive to keep in your life, because it's something that will propel you, especially during COVID. Like, Step Africa never stopped. We
Mm,
produced a lot of virtual work, and
yeah.
did virtual workshops, and we even rehearsed virtually. We rehearsed outside, on a stage in DC, at the pavilion. We kept it going because we recognized and realized that, the arts are really important. The arts are what feeds the soul, and propels people forward,
Yeah.
and life forward. So again, persistence, don't stop.
Awesome. Well, Mfon, thank you for chatting with me. I'm really glad we had this chance. I'm really looking forward
Yes,
to this weekend. I feel like I need a
absolutely.
stamp card for how oftentimes I've seen Step Africa, get a free t-shirt at some point.
frequent flyer,
Yeah,
frequent,
frequent,
yeah,
frequent viewer.
audience member.
Yeah, there we
Exactly.
go.
Yeah.
All
No,
right.
I'll definitely look out for you as well. I'll be there.
Awesome.
And we are, like we said, we are super excited because this is really the kickoff to our season. And
Yeah,
I know New York is going to bring that energy. So yeah,
definitely.
looking forward to
Happy
it.
30th.
Thank you. We look good for 30, don't we?
Yeah, you look awesome. A good 18-year-old company.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.